Hello. It's been a while. Once again, I'm August. I'm reading. It's been a hot minute since I have posted a video. I have filmed so many vlogs and then I just really changed my mind about sharing them or posting them. I didn't feel very confident about them. I didn't feel very good about them. So I just decided to do as I do, which is kind of fade into the mist for a little bit. But I'm here and I don't know if you probably can't see everything, but I'm truly surrounded by books right now. Winston is in this pile of blankets. I am in my living room. I hope you all are doing really well. My living room is coming together really well. I just got this antique credenza like a month or so ago at a garage sale for like 20 bucks, so life is really good. I felt really pulled to start filming again because one, I have found some really wonderful, cheap, inexpensive used books that make my heart really happy. And second is I'm actually reading books that I'm passionate about. This year so far has not been great for reading for me, for books. I don't feel like I have read a 5-star book in over like 2 years. I'm starting to feel like things are turning around in July. As I said, I have books that I want to talk about. First off, I would love to talk about the books I'm currently reading because they make me so happy. They make me so happy. Finally! I'm really rooting for these books. I also would love to share the books that I have read so far this summer. It's a decent-ish stack. And then go over this like massive book haul that I have from the past, I don't know, this month in July. I have not been spending a ton of money on books, but it's really been amazing what you find on the side of the road. It's incredible. Let's talk about the books I'm currently reading because I love them. I love them so much and I'm so excited and I'm so happy. The first book I'm reading is The Fig Tree by Aubrey Menon. I don't know what happened to my cover. Someone just like snipped it. But I finally went to John K. King Books, which I think is the US's largest used bookstore, or maybe it's just Michigan's largest bookstore. I don't know, but it's used and it is rickety and it is a giant warehouse and it feels like it's like 4 or 5, 6 floors tall. I don't know, don't quote me on that. And it has no air conditioning and it is hot and it is dusty and I sneezed so much. But I found this copy of The Fig Tree. I had never heard of it before. Y'all, I'm in love. Knocking on wood, I don't want this to be jinxed at all, but I think this might be a 5-star read for me. Finally, this feels like it's in the category of Madame de Lafayette's Princess of Cleves with Chrome Yellow by Aldous Huxley. It is satirical. It is so wildly funny. I am laughing out loud when I read this. I'm kicking my feet. It is so smart. It's funny in a smart way. It is so sharp and funny. This book was originally published in the 1950s, originally, 1957, and we're following this main character named Harry, who's a scientist. And his biggest goal is that he wants to create the first oral contraceptive, like birth control. His professor then tells him, like, I don't think that's idealistic. There are so many people who are trying to do that. Like, figure something else out. And he was like, okay, I think I want to make a contraceptive for plants. But I also want to be able to make plants have the most beautiful, ripe fruit via these like reproductive ways of plants. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a botanist. They gloss over what that actually means in here. So he goes to this beautiful little town in Italy. He befriends this American man who's living there who is such a character. It is very satirical and poking fun of those super mega wealthy American folks who don't do anything. They're just sitting back on daddy's money as their family runs like this massive empire of factories that make every product imaginable. And our protagonist, Harry, has been working on scientifically engineering this fig tree on the coast of this town in Italy. He's giving them these contraceptives, basically, and they're creating these massive figs. So he starts, barbed wiring it off. People can't eat it because there's medicine. It's been scientifically tampered with. But our American friend, who's a huge foodie, he'd be a modern day foodie for sure, gets his hands on a fig, he eats it, and we find out it is a complete aphrodisiac. Because of the medicine's like contraceptive powers has turned this fig into this aphrodisiac. But basically he has turned into a complete horn dog. He's having dreams, like these wild sexcapades. And he is normally a very pious man. He's a very conservative male. He's not a womanizer. And so he is like, oh my gosh, I'm disgusting. I'm a slut. I'm a whore. Like, he's so upset with himself. But our main character, Harry, has also eaten the figs. And so when his friend, I think his name is Paul, I want to say the American man's name is Paul. So when Paul is like, something is wrong with your figs, man, Harry's like, oh my gosh, it happened to you too. We need to make sure and keep ourselves straight, because they're both like really nerdy, not very attractive men. And they're like, oh my gosh, we're not like this. We're not those men. We need to keep each other accountable and not like pursue women. But it's done in such a way that it's funny. It is so funny because it has so much satire. And in this as well, Harry had this monologue over dinner about the future of science and the difference between scientists and biologists, people who are working in pharmaceuticals versus biologists, et cetera, et cetera. And he was talking about there will never be technology or robots that are sentient and can express human emotion. And there will never be babies made in tubes, because this predates the first test tube baby, which I did Google, was born in 1978. It's so interesting, and it's so satirical about the science community, about wealth, about, I don't know, I'm just having a blast with this. It's really fun. I'm laughing out loud to myself when I read this. I've been reading it in public a few times and I'm smirking so big, and I just love it. So I can't wait to read more of this. It's a shorty. I think I have 90 or so pages left in this, and I'm so excited to finish it, friends. I'm having such a blast. It's so fun, and it's just really well written. I'm really enjoying it, and it's so bizarre. If anyone follows me on Goodreads and you saw me reading this, like, first off, this cover is stunning. I definitely prefer it over what's on Goodreads, but also just know that there aren't very many people who've marked this as read. I don't think very many people have read this, but I love it. I think it's so funny. So I'm really holding out hope that it continues to be great and funny and not weird, because I think that this could borderline become incredibly sexist and take a weird, creepy turn. But as of right now, I just find it really funny and very enjoyable. It feels a lot like Midsummer Night's Dream as well. It's just a lot of these aphrodisiac properties are really interesting. So I'm also listening to an amazing audiobook right now, which is great because I have not had much luck with audiobooks lately. Probably in the past few years, I have not had good luck with audiobooks, but it's called Lemon, or The Lemon. This is also satire. Look at me. I have turned into a satirical hoe. This is satire that follows the death of a very famous, prominent pop culture icon named John Doe. First chapter starts with John Doe, his life, whatever. Then the second chapter follows his best friend finding him passed away, and he died from an accidental erotic asphyxiation issue. The second chapter then follows the bellboy at the hotel who finds the friend finding John Doe. Then it follows John Doe's talent agent as she's reached out to by John Doe's best friend. So there's like this string. From there it goes to like the reporter who breaks a story, and then it's about a restaurant owner who the woman who wrote the story about John Doe included his restaurant in her article. The string just keeps going. So part one is being introduced to like 9 different characters who are all, I think it all takes place all on the same day that they find out John Doe has passed away. So it will be like July 17th, 1:02 p.m. The next chapter will be July 17th, 2:02 p.m. But it's all from these different people's perspectives as they find out John Doe has passed away. But it is so funny. It is making fun of the culture of elitist foodies, of cooking shows, of pseudo-celebrities, people who just take their fame and capitalize on it with like cookbooks and cooking shows and all these very silly things that wealth can do to people. It's also very satirical about the writing industry and journalism in general. I think the company that the journalist in this novel works for is called something really silly, like Slews or something. And I just feel like it's a cross between like BuzzFeed, Slate, like all of these wackadoodle publications that feed off of this very, very fast writing style of just getting it published. Story was broken, go get it, get it, get it. It's this conveyor belt kind of writing. Not dissing any of that, but it's just a very interesting topic that they're talking about here. How you can break one story and it can go viral and it can change the course of a lot of things and a lot of people's lives. But it's just so satirical and it's so funny and it is so well written. Again, it's just very sharp. It's very funny. It is very intelligent writing and I'm enjoying it so much. I'm really, really enjoying this, and the audiobook narrator is fabulous. There are characters in this of multiple different nationalities. There's an Irish man, there's a Russian man, there are several female characters, there's I think a French man. But this audiobook narrator does all of the accents. Every time it's their chapter that we're following, he reads it in their voice, and it is incredible. I'm like, how is this all the same man? It is very impressive. It feels like I'm listening to a movie. You know, it's fabulous. It's so fun. Again, not a lot of people have marked this read on Goodreads, and it's really fun. I'm enjoying it immensely. So those are the books I'm currently reading. I also was going to include this in the book haul, but I'll tell you now, I did start quite a chunky book of short stories. This is called Dreams of Dead Women's Handbags, Collected Stories by Sheena McKay. I am obsessed with this cover. I'm obsessed with this cover. I want to make art like this. I want to take photographs like this. I don't know why. I am so in love with it. These short stories span from 1974 to 1994, and they are fabulous. I believe I'm 4 or 5 short stories in. I have not picked it up in a hot minute, but I also got this at John K. King Books. I would love to do a separate independent video of me exploring that bookstore because it's so massive and fun, but I feel like it would make more sense to do that in the fall because there's no air conditioning and it's just really hot in there. But this is really enjoyable, very quirky, surrealist pieces. The first story in this was really, really funny. I enjoyed it a lot. It felt a lot like, it's called The Blue Orchestra, and it felt a lot like The Perfect Place by Sheila, I can't remember her name, but I'll link the vlog down below that I read that book because that was a fabulous book. But this is really fun. It's a really big book of short stories. This is huge. I don't foresee myself finishing this anytime soon, honestly, but for now it's just on my nightstand, and when I want to pick up a little short story, I'll do that, set it down. But honestly, I am too intrigued by the fig tree to pick this up right now. So those are the 3 books I'm currently reading. I'm going to briefly chat about the books that I've read so far this summer in chronological order. I've read about like 7 books this summer so far, so not too bad, and I consider summer as like late May to now. My neighbor was weed whacking, I believe, so hopefully that nice hum in the background will be soothing sounds of summer to you all. I hope you've all had a really good summer, by the way. I have been loving summer. I've been loving reading in my backyard. I've been going everywhere. I have been doing everything. Today, specifically, I will show, but I went to an outdoor concert in Ann Arbor, which is fabulous. I love Ann Arbor. Went to Dawn Treader, which is probably my favorite bookstore ever, if I can really say that. All used books, and they had $1 books outside. So I'm gonna share a little book haul from that today too. But every day has been something like that. Every day I'm traveling somewhere, I'm experiencing something fun. It's just been delightful. This summer has been popping off. It's been amazing. So anyway, first book I read was actually Valley of the Dolls by Jacqueline Susan. I thrifted this back in March. I finally read it. I started reading this on my flight and while I was in Palm Springs, California for my birthday in April. When I got home, life really was not going well. I actually had to take Winston to the emergency hospital. He's fine, but he was diagnosed with asthma and it was terrifying. So it was not a good time. Around my birthday was not a good time in my life, honestly. It was really hard and stressful and scary, but we're good now. Winston's doing so well. He is fine. Basically, I did not pick it up for several weeks, and then I finished it in May. So this was so much fun, my friends. We're following 3 young women as they are trying to make their lives happen in New York City, starting in the 40s, going until, I believe this goes until the 60s or 70s, and it does become very dependent on pharmaceutical drugs and addiction. These 3 characters were so interesting to me. I had no idea what I was getting into, truly. I did not know much about Valley of the Dolls. I just knew I wanted to read it for a long, long time. And I enjoyed this so much. It was modern day Middlemarch. That's what it feels like to me. It's just a lot of people having conversation, a lot of plot happening through dialogue. I loved getting to know these characters. Neely drove me freaking bonkers. If anyone's read this, Neely is an annoying little gnome, and I just want to kick her. She drove me nuts. Oh, Jennifer North has my heart. I love Jennifer North. I fell in love with Jennifer North. And then our main character, Anne. I'm sorry, bland Anne. I don't give a shit about Anne. But either way, I really enjoyed this. I thought it was so sad. When certain things happened, I was just devastated. By the end of the book, I was just devastated. I then watched the film. The film was good, but if you want like 400 pages of so much more happening than just the film, 10 out of 10, highly recommend this. It was so fun. I really enjoyed it. This is such a fun reminder for me to have on my shelves that like I read it. It's just a fond memory. And I really enjoyed, especially reading this in California. That was like by a pool. That was really fun. So I loved that. I don't rate books on Goodreads, but if I did, this would probably be like a 4-star. Most of these books I feel like are 4 stars to me. Then I read The Invention of Moral by Adolfo Bayo Casares. This is translated into English by Ruth L.C. Simmons. It was originally published in 1964. My edition has these gorgeous illustrations as well that are so beautiful. And this is more like a novella, but we're following this unnamed male protagonist who is on this deserted island, and on the deserted island are 3 separate little properties. There's like a museum / mausoleum, there's a pool, then there's like a chapel of sorts. You know, it's a deserted island, but all of a sudden one day people are on the island, and he is so scared. Oh man. Anyway, all of a sudden he finds people on the island. They just show up and they're like having a party, and he's watching them from afar, and he falls in love with a woman even though he never speaks to her. She just always sits by the water and looks out. And he's like, oh my gosh, what a majestic woman. I want to talk to her. And then things happen. And this is a psychological Shutter Island vibes where like, what is really happening? Is all this happening in this main character's head? Or is it in real life? Like trippy things are happening and we don't know why or what is happening. I had so much fun reading this. I read it in 2 sittings in my backyard in the hot summer sun, which was so fun. I had a blast with this. I thought it was just done really, really well. I think the last page, that ending was done really well. When I first read it, I was like, what? That's the ending? Okay, that didn't really linger with me, but when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that was a really good way to show us rather than tell us what happened in the ending. So I enjoyed this. Again, 4 stars. It doesn't linger with me. I honestly forget that I read it. That's okay. It was just fun. I enjoyed it. So there you go. Then I listened to an audiobook called The Alyssas by Samantha Leach, I think. I'll put it on the screen. I was really interested in this at first because it's about the troubled teen industry, about these crazy camps that parents send their children to, where they allow their children to get kidnapped, thrown in a van, and taken to like a corrective facility for teenagers. And then actually a lot of abuse happens. Go figure. There are a lot of documentaries that have come out about this world recently, and I thought this would be another really interesting deep dive into that. This is written from Samantha's point of view, and it is a hybrid memoir, non-fic. I don't really know. I was really captivated mainly because Samantha's best friends with a young girl named Alyssa. They were childhood best friends. Alyssa gets sent to a teen corrective facility, and she becomes friends with 2 other Alyssas, and all 3 of them have different spellings of Alyssa. So as an audiobook, it was very interesting to be like, there's Alyssa P and Alyssa O and Alyssa N. Very hard to separate, whereas in the book, it would just be a different spelling of Alyssa. So very confusing in general. But all 3 of them struggled with drug addictions, this troubled teen stuff, talking about what they went through. And within the span of 5 years, they all passed away. So this was following what led to their deaths. And I thought it was gonna be this really interesting expose of like what happened. I thought that there was gonna be a lot more information, but what it ended up being was this super biased, like I just don't trust this book at all. There are exact quotations used in this book, like dialogue, so it reads like a fiction novel of these young women interacting with each other, of like, no, why would we do that, said Alyssa. Well, we gotta get away from our parents, said Alyssa. And I was like, were you there? Who has these records of these young women talking to each other? Like, there are no records of this. Like, you should say like, oh, from a video taken in 2012, you hear them say, I don't know, I just felt so speculative and it felt so phony and fraud, and I did not think it was very helpful or safe to portray these women in this way than with inaccurate information. It just did not feel accurate to me. Someone can come at me and tell me that I'm wrong, but it felt so biased. I felt like this author was completely inserting her own narrative into everything and coming up with these conclusions herself without actual data. At first I was very interested in this because it was around this specific niche of young, white, semi-affluent girls, like teenagers, and how teenagehood is so romanticized and over-sexualized as like a young white girl, especially growing up in the early 2000s with a lot of tabloid magazines with Paris Hilton, Lindsay Lohan, like all these, you know, bad girls getting into the news and paparazzi and acting out. You know, it was a very specific brand that came from that. And I thought it was really interesting to start with, but as it went on, I just thought it was insinuating a lot without actually having concrete information. So, not my favorite. Okay, then I read The Wife, the Maid, and the Mistress by Ariel Lahone. I got this from a library book sale in my neighborhood. This cover is not it, but this is a historical fiction based on the disappearance of Judge Joseph Crater, which happened in the 1930s. This true Supreme Court justice just went missing one night, and this is kind of a historical fiction of like what possibly could have happened to him and who done it. Super fascinating case if you've never heard of it. I think it's really interesting. It is still unsolved to this day, so this was just like a really fun summer murder mystery. It was fine. I had a lot of fun while reading it. It didn't keep me totally captivated, but like while I'd read it, I was interested enough. And I did just want a silly murder mystery thriller in the summer just to read outside. Something a little bit lighter, fluffier. We all need light and fluffy sometimes. So that was my light and fluffy. It was fine. I'm gonna donate this book. I would give it like 3 stars, so there you go. Then I read The Summer She Was Underwater by Jen Michalski that I got several years ago. I think it was at like a used bookstore or something, and I will say right off the bat, this is very indie published because there were so many grammar mistakes. There were so many blatant punctuation issues, words missing in sentences, grammatically made no sense, which was very disappointing. This follows a young woman named Sam who revisits her family's cabin on the 4th of July, and her very tumultuous brother arrives, and he and her have a very dicey history, and it gets weird. It gets really freaking weird. A lot of trigger warnings. Basically, incest was happening when they were teenagers, like they were hooking up with each other, and it was... But at the same time, Sam is also a writer. She wrote this story that won awards and got published about like a pregnant man. So interspersed throughout this, we're getting chapters of this novel that she wrote. At first, I thought this was really interesting and different just because a lot of it was dialogue, which I did enjoy, but the dialogue felt so unrealistic to me personally. The way that we were being told, like, oh, the brother is a bad boy, because he just talks like a jerk. He's supposed to be in his 30s, so it's just kind of giving immature vibes, which I think is what the author was trying to do anyway. It just didn't feel very realistic to me. I think what rubbed me the wrong way the most out of this, though, is that her family is considered, quote unquote, like trailer trash. Like, they smoke a lot of cigarettes and they eat things out of cans, and that's about it. They have a cabin on a lake. Like, that's their second home. I still think that requires some bit of money and affluence to be able to have a second house on a lake. But I think it's because this takes place in New England. But the way this author / Sam is so ashamed of her family for being like poor, quote unquote, or eating green beans out of cans was just odd to me, because I'm sorry, I'm from the Midwest. I think everyone has family who's like that, and it's just very, like, you go anywhere and you're gonna see, like, that isn't that bizarre. And I thought it was like rude and weird to classify people and to be so like mean about people's living situations and just poverty in general. It was just weird. It put a really bad taste in my mouth. I thought it was really odd. I understand there being shame and money and wealth and class and status and stuff, but I wish we actually talked about it instead of the writing style and this character being so weird to me. So I did not really enjoy this. Definitely like 3 stars, 2 stars. I'm gonna donate it. Then I read my second Jeanette Winterson. I read Sexing the Cherry. I really thought this would be a 5-star read. Surprise, surprise, it was not. It was so fun to read this though. This takes place in like the 1400s. We're following this boy who becomes a man named Jordan, and he is in love with traveling and bringing back exotic fruits and tropical foods back to this weary, dreary London. And then his adoptive mother is called the Dog Woman, who is such a fascinating character. The characters alone in this are really interesting. This book took such a different turn than I anticipated. I didn't know where it was going regardless, but then when it took this interesting turn, I don't know if I liked it. It just kind of simmered out for me. My interest for this simmered out. I flew through it, and I flew through the ending and didn't really take that much time to reminisce. It didn't really linger with me, and so I just put it away, and I haven't thought about it since. So that's when I sadly know it was not a 5-star read for me. Even if it was enjoyable to read in the moment, it didn't linger with me. So overall, I would give this like a 4-star. Again, fun to read, but not memorable for me personally. And then lastly, the last book that I just finished is Venus in Furs by Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. Love this edition. She gorge. I really enjoyed this. If you're not familiar, Venus in Furs was originally published in 1870. This edition is translated into English by Fernando Savage. This follows a man who is a masochist, and hence why masochism is called masochism, is because it's his last name, Masoch, Leopold von Masoch. Fun fact, you're gonna learn something today if you did not know that. So yeah, 1800s, late 1800s, a book about a man who wants to be demoralized, wants to be shamed and embarrassed and whipped and hurt, wants to be the slave of a beautiful woman named Wanda. And there's a lot of power play in this, and this actually made me think a lot. What would it mean if the person you are in love with wants to be hurt? In order for them to feel loved by you, they want to feel hurt. But if that's not the way that you want to show love, but you want them to feel loved, so you do something that you don't love to do by loving them, which is hurting them, physically, emotionally abusing them. Fascinating. I think it's really interesting, and I think it's really interesting to go directly to like the source. The kind of what stemmed all of this is from Venus in Furs. I think I've heard more issues with this book than I've heard good things. I think a lot of people have issues with this book, but I personally enjoyed it. So I don't know, I might be in that camp that really weirdly liked it. Like, I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting. I love the writing style. I love the descriptions of these houses that they were in, because Wanda does end up taking this man on as her slave, and they travel throughout Italy, I believe. And just the descriptions of like the rooms and the furs she's wearing and like this Byzantine architecture, like, oh my gosh, like I thought it was beautiful until the last like 2 pages. The last page or so, I was just horrified, because I thought at the beginning of this novel and just like throughout it, I was just solely here for the experience and for how much it made my brain think. And I really enjoyed it. And then, yeah, those last 2 pages just were kind of a sucker punch to the gut, honestly. So overall, I really enjoyed Venus in Furs. Again, I would give it like 4 stars if I was rating books, but yeah. Now on to my secondhand book haul. Ta-da! So the first book I actually found in a little free library while on a hike was a book of French poetry. I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I do not speak French. I speak minimal Spanish, but this is all in French, and I have slowly been translating it, and it's beautiful. It is so beautiful. I'm loving it. Specifically the first poem in here. I mean, obviously my translation might not be accurate. I'm literally just going through like Google Translate at this point, but it's been a really fun thing for me to do. Salut. Salut was a very, very, very beautiful poem, but it's beautiful, and this is just a gorgeous edition. So yeah, French poetry. Then I got this funky little book. I'm obsessed with this cover. I'm obsessed with it. This is Under Gemini by Rosamond Pilcher. I don't know if you can tell what's on this cover, but it is this really funky design. It's very glossy, but kind of like a peacock mixed with like an oil spill. And I'm just, I just love covers like this so much. I love unique old covers. This was published in, I want to say the 90s. Oh, wow, I was way off. 1976, actually. And this follows a woman named Flora. She lives in Cornwall, which I love. I love Cornwall. I visited once and I would love to go back. I really loved Cornwall. And she finds out she has a twin sister, and they swap lives. Gemini twin. So like 1970s Parent Trap kind of vibe, but for 22-year-olds in Cornwall, and then I think they moved to like London and have this like young adult life, whatever. I don't know what to expect, but I think this would be a really fun summer read. Again, just a romp, just something silly. But I love a weird, quirky find. Who doesn't? I'm pretty excited about it. Okie dokie. Then I found in another little free library, I'm gonna have to go back to all of these and put books in them. I didn't think I'd be finding so many little free libraries, but I did. I found Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, which is this beautiful, stunning, gorgeous, floppy paperback. The love that I have for big, thick, floppy paperbacks is undeniable, but I am such a fan of reading short books. Like when I look on my shelves, my big books just are so intimidating to me. I just really love short books. Like it cannot be denied. I love short books, but there's something about a thick book that I just want to get lost in. But most thick books are fantasy or sci-fi, and those are not my genres, but this feels like I could actually really enjoy it. This follows a young girl, I believe. Yeah, in the 15th century, an orphan learns to read in an ancient city, famous for its libraries, and she finds a copy of a centuries-old book. And then I think we're getting snippets of that book. And then in present day, in a library in Idaho, there's like another adaptation of that same story. And then in a not so distant future, on the interstellar ship, someone is in a vault copying scraps of sacking the story of copying on scraps of sacking. What? Okay. And then in the not so distant future, and then in the not so distant future, on an inner. I can't. On an interstellar ship, another person basically is reading the same story. So it's following the centuries-old story called Aethon. I feel like my face is getting really red because I'm like, I can't get it together. Okay, but then it's everyone 15th century, present day, and then in the future, also reading the story of Aethon. I really want to read this. I want to read this so bad, and I want to read it soon, and I want to dive into like a big, chunky book so bad, especially one that is actually readable, that makes me want to read, but it's all about books and libraries and literature and the magic of reading. If anyone's read this, please let me know. It was a National Book Award finalist, and honestly, I've heard of Anthony Doerr before, heard of some of his work, but I haven't heard of this book specifically, so I'd be very curious. So I'm really excited to read this, mainly just because of the feeling of it, so kudos to big floppy paperbacks. Okay. Then I thrifted the Pre-Raphaelites Romance and Realism. This is actually just like a nonfiction book about the Pre-Raphaelites, and it is gorgeous. Like, it is so glossy. Like, this texture is like a textbook in school kind of vibe, but smaller, and oh, it's so pretty. And oh, it's so pretty. I just want to read more fun nonfiction in my life. Yeah, in 1848, in the heart of Victorian London, young artists and poets gather to form a new art movement, the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood. So, gorgeous. The last book that I got at John K. King Books, besides this one above my head, actually, which I forgot to show, I did get this vintage, beautiful copy of Wild Geese by Martha Ostenso, which was published in the 1920s. So it's almost 100 years old. And the signing in it is from June 24th, 1926. Many happy returns from Georgia and Doris. But I got this because I am obsessed with geese, and it just goes right here, and it's beautiful. I hope this has been entertaining so far, friends. It's been a hot minute since I've talked about books. So yeah, the last book I got at John K. King Books is Fabulous Nobodies by Lee Talush. This predates Sex and the City. This is an Australian author. This is satirical, pseudo-celebrity. Woman is famous for having outrageous cool outfits. She's the door woman at like a club, and her name is Reality Nirvana Tuttle, and she's in love with her clothes. She works at the hippest nightclub in the East Village, and then she loses her job. She starts to work with like a gossip columnist and blah blah blah. But it's kind of compared to like pre-Candace Bushnell New York City young woman romp, and I love it. I'm just such a fan of this like party girl, young 20s, somewhat affluent, privileged in some way. I'm just so fascinated by that world and that culture because I don't go out. I'm a book nerd, friends. I'm not a party girl. So this is really interesting. It was originally published in 1989. The book is dedicated to Lolita and all the frocks she's going to wear. So satirical, wackadoodle. I mean, this cover is stunning. I think that the cover on Goodreads is trash for this, so if you see me marking it as red, please don't. This is the cover I bought, and it's very cool, and I like it a lot, and that font is fabulous. So there we go. Okay, oh my gosh, then I visited my hometown, Grand Rapids, last weekend. Got to see so many of my friends. Sadly, not all of them, but a lot of them. I spent like 3 days there only hanging out with friends, and it was magical. But a new bookstore opened. If anyone is in the Grand Rapids, Michigan area, please go to Black Dog. Holy moly, I'm in love. And it's definitely inspiring for me. They're Black Dog used books and records. Fabulous. So the next few books I did get there. It just makes me really want to open my own used bookstore one day. I have ideas. I don't have plans, but I have visions and dreams. Anyway, I got a copy of Franny and Zoe by J.D. Salinger. G-Day. Good day. I've never read Franny and Zoe, and this was so reasonably priced. I think it was like $3.50. Also, they have a very, very cool branding for Black Dog. Again, friends, go to there if you're in Grand Rapids. Fun place to be. I love this edition. I'm so excited to read Franny and Zoe. I would love to try to fit this in this summer. Again, I have quite a few books that I would love to read this summer. I would love to do a vlog soon. I want to create like a rest of my summer TBR, finish The Fig Tree, definitely read a few of these that I just picked up. Yeah, so hopefully I can do a vlog soon. I would love to get back into doing booktube. I know I say that all the time. Another side tangent, but I miss it, but I want to be reading good books to vlog, so I feel like it's finally happening. I'm finally reading good books that I'm excited to talk about. Anywho, and also at Black Dog, I got Herland by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, who wrote Yellow Wallpaper. I have another one of her novels, Unpunished, which is a murder mystery satire, which I would love to read. But Herland is very much like a social commentary about like an all-female utopia and what happens to 3 male explorers who stumble upon it. I am so excited to read this. So excited. Again, another book I would love to read this summer. I am really, really excited about it. And also I love, this edition has been very lightly, gently annotated in pencil, which I love. I just love other people's annotations. Oh, they wrote on the side, constructions, exclamation point. I love this. Oh yeah, I'm really excited to read my second Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Then, okay, this, I gotta sit down. I gotta fully sit down for this one. Then, okay, I have been really wanting to honor myself lately and just fully steep and steep myself into things that I'm weirdly very interested in. I've been going to a lot of like museums lately. I've been reading a lot of like historical plaques. It's just my favorite thing. Like learning weird facts is so interesting to me. But one of them is like the Great Lakes and shipwrecks. Terrifying, but I love it. I got this book called Haunted Lakes. Look at this cover. Oh my gosh. By Frederick Stonehouse. Look at this glitchy picture on the back. Oh my gosh. That is not a real man. That's an AI man. But it says Great Lakes ghost stories, superstitions, and sea serpents. But there are historical, creepy photos in here. And if it has like, oh my gosh, if it's anything about like shipwrecks and like bottom of the lake thing, yeah, horrifying. That is horrifying. This is horrifying to me. That like we just go swimming, like Earlier this year, I was up in Traverse City and I was just swimming in Lake Michigan, and I'm like, there are whole boats and barges in here. Like, the Great Lakes are massive. Like, the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, and like, oh, it's freaky because they're not oceans, but they are just so deep and so creepy. And like, this is gonna give me the heebie-jeebies, I think, more than any other like horror novel. It's been a hot minute since a horror novel has actually made me scared. This is gonna freak me out. But it's also filled with really interesting historical facts, which I love. I'm gonna munch on this. What you doing? And then in another little free library, oh my gosh, I found this cool edition of Dracula by Bram Stoker, which I have never read. Another big, delicious, yummy floppy paperback. I am so grateful that this was just chilling in a little free library. I was in Grand Rapids with my sister before we went to Black Dog, and we spontaneously walked to like the farmer's market. I don't know, man, it was a vibe. Like walking around the city with like this tucked under my arm, I was like, oh, it's summer. I'm the main character. I'm so excited. I would love to read Dracula this fall. That'd be really fun. I really want to face my fears of big books head on and just try again. So Dracula, so excited. Very, very beautiful edition as well. Oh my goodness, look who's here, guys. It's Winston. He says, I am trying to get off my asthma medication now, but I'm doing so well. And we're seeing a specialist in a few weeks to get him off his steroids for his asthma. Okay, we're on to the last 4 books, my friends. These are all the books that I got today while I was in Ann Arbor. So the first is at Dawn Treader outside. You get that carpet, buddy. Outside there was a box of free books. So I did get a book in there, and then they had little trolley carts outside for $1 books. Incredible. So I actually got this book for my dad. My dad actually collects these modern library editions, and this is really interesting because it's actually a paperback. Normally I find hardcover modern library books, but they're just stunning. I don't know when he started his collection, but I always kind of keep my eye out for these for him. I think this is the second one I've ever found for him, but I can't believe I found it for free. And this is actually an edition of Tono Bungay by H.G. Wells, which after reading the synopsis of it, I'm like, maybe before I travel to go see my dad again, like maybe I can read it, or maybe I can read it, then he can read it, and we can do another sit down chatty video, because we haven't done that in like over 2 years. I think it was 2 years ago that we did literature, where we get lit and talk about literature. But this is really interesting. It's again very kind of satirical, making fun of capitalistic pharmaceuticals, which is really interesting because it came out in the early 1900s. But it's about this supplement medication that does nothing called Tono Bungay. People just go nuts for it. They think it cures them of everything, but in actuality, it's probably like a sugar pill. It's placebo, basically. So it seems really interesting. So I'd be kind of curious to read it myself, but also I want to honor the fact that I got this for my dad and it is not mine, but like, oh my gosh, these modern library editions are so beautiful. Copyright 1908. Like, these pages are so delicate and dainty. Yeah, it says the days before Tono Bungay was invented, chapter the first. Most people in this world seem to live in character. They have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the three are congruous one with another and true to the rules of their type. Oh, yeah, see, I'd really like to read this. So maybe. Sorry, Dad, I might take that. Then I found an arc of a book that I read in middle school. Please let me know if anyone else had to read this for middle school or high school. I think it was for one of my like honors English classes. That's freaking Sophie's World by Justine Garter. This is an uncorrected proof of Sophie's World. I am obsessed with this cover. I'm obsessed with it. This is a novel about the history of philosophy. I did not give a lick about philosophy. I thought philosophy was so stupid because I was like, yeah, like, duh. Philosophy just felt innately human, like, duh. Yes, there are different ways of viewing the world and concept and humanity. It made no, like, I was like, so what? I think now I might be more interested in it, but it's all about this young girl who, oh my gosh, yeah, the back reads, tentative publication date, September 1994. This is like a piece of history, okay? This is so cool. But this follows a young girl, I believe she's a young girl named Sophie. All I really remember is that she has the ability to like, I don't know if she goes back in time or if other philosophers come and like visit her. I just remember there being like a backyard garden party and she's sitting around and all these other philosophers are like talking to her and like teaching her philosophy. That's all I remember. It was like, it's just very much a philosophical textbook, but in an accessible way through this young girl's view. But yeah, very, very interesting. I don't know if I'd ever reread it, but honestly, I'm just here for the memories, for this really unique cover, and the fact that it's in uncorrected arc. And then lastly, in that box, I have one more book, I promise, but this is the other book I got, Dawn Treader. This was in their $1 box. Is a little different, more a coffee table book, is Helaman Ferguson, Mathematics in Stone and Bronze. Helaman Ferguson is a mathematician, but also an artist who creates these like incredibly stunning sculptures. And I'm obsessed with that fusion of math and art. So I'm really, really, really curious to read more about this. It's just beautiful and stunning, and I'm very, very curious and interested more in the sculpture world. So I thought this was really cool, especially the fusion between math and art. So fascinating. I love that fusion so much. So there's that. And then lastly, swung by the public library. They had free books just chilling on a rack as well in Ann Arbor today. And I got this book. This book could either be so good or so bad because it's not normally something I'd read, but it's intriguing enough and it feels like something I would have read a few years ago. It's a genre that I find myself continuously pulled to, but I've yet to find a book that like really encapsulates the feeling of what I think is gonna feel like. Anyway, long-winded way of saying I picked up The River Midnight by Lillian Natal. Look at that cover. Again, we got a glossy cover, but it's kind of this eerie, ghostly. This is a debut novel, originally published 1999. Ooh, by Moon Lily Manuscripts. Kind of love that. This is Myth Meets History in Blaszka, a fictional village northwest of Warsaw, where angels and demons walk in the fin de siècle shadows, enticing the people of Blaszka to face their deepest wishes and fears. Wild creatures in the woods of like women divinely dancing under the moonlight, and then the midwife becomes pregnant, and it's all about this like wayward heart of this village. I think it says, oh, it's a cold day, the short Friday of winter, the 20th of Tevet 5654, or you might call it the 29th of December 1893, according to the Christian calendar. So there's like this little prologue that kind of sets the scene of like where we are and what's happening. And then part one is the woman. Chapter one is mushroom soup. I feel like this could be really fun for the cozy winter months. Potentially, especially because it takes place in December, a little bit of like a weird historical fiction, speculative fiction, fantasy, mythology kind of vibe. Like I want to be interested in those things. I watch so many booktubers who get really into some of these fantasy books and I'm like, it just can't be me. But I want to read, I want to like some form of fantasy, and I think I'm just on the quest of still trying to figure out like what kind of fantasy I do enjoy, and if I do at all, and that's okay if I don't. There we have it, friends. That is my massive used book haul, what I'm currently reading, what I have read so far this summer. I hope you all have been doing really, really well. If you would like to comment something, I would love to hear from you. But if you don't know what to comment, please share maybe a book that you just like thrifted or found used that you're really excited to read. And or feel free to comment your favorite book that you've read so far this summer. And or if you're like, I don't want to share anything, please do not perceive me. If you want to leave an emoji string of emojis that represent those two books. So you don't even have to tell us what books they are. If you want to tell us just through emojis, you know, if it's The River Midnight, for example, you could do a little water emoji and a moon emoji. You know what I'm saying? Make it fun, make it creative. I love seeing all the emojis. I think it's a really fun way to interact without like fully having to type words. Here for that. Thank you all so incredibly much. I really, really hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here, for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little catch up, this very chatty video. Hopefully coming soon will be a vlog. I have started vlogging again, and I just want to keep talking about the fig tree, so hopefully stay tuned. Thank you all again so incredibly much, and I can't wait to see you again for my next video. Until then, stay cozy, my friends. Bye!